Mr. Moore's math class.
Good afternoon, evening, morning, really, I don't care what time of day it is. All I care about, guys, is that you are learning maths where and when it suits you best. That's right, welcome to Mr. Moore's online flip classroom. Now today we're going to be learning plenty about how to find the distance and midpoint between 2 points. But before we do that, let's just quickly have a look at the formulas that you're going to need to use to be able to find these things. Now it may sound silly, but whenever you're asked to find the distance and midpoint between 2 points, of course you're going to need to have 2 points. Now to find the distance between 2 points, you can use this formula. And to be able to find the midpoint between 2 points, you're going to need to use this formula.
So now it's time to have a look at some worked examples on how to find the distance and midpoint between 2 points. But before we do that, let's just recap on some of the stuff that we've gone over. To find the distance between 2 points, that is the length between here and here, we use the formula d is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, where x1, y1 is your first point and x2, y2 is your second point. And to find the midpoint between 2 points, that is the halfway point between any 2 points, we use the formula m is equal to x2 plus x1 on 2, comma, y2 plus y1 on 2. And of course, to be able to use both of these formulas, we must have 2 points. So the first example asks us to find the distance between the points -7, 10 and 5, -3. Okay, because the question asks us to find the distance between 2 points, we're actually going to use the distance formula, which you can see me highlighting here. So let's write that out again, where our 2 points are -7, 10 and 5, -3. Right, let's call this x1, y1 and x2, y2. Substituting into the formula now, you get d is equal to the square root of x2 being 5 minus x1 being -7 all squared plus y2 being -3 minus y1 being 10 all squared. This therefore is equal to the square root of 5, the two negatives become a positive, so plus 7 squared plus, in brackets, -3 minus 10 all bracket squared, which of course is equal to square root of 5 plus 7 is 12 squared plus -3 minus 10 is -13 squared, which is equal to square root of 12 squared is 144 plus -13 squared is 169, which is equal to the square root of 313. Now unless the question actually asks you to give your answer in decimal places, what I want you to do is always leave it as the third, because that's an actual exact answer. As soon as you start giving decimal places, you're rounding and it's no longer 100% accurate. Alright, so now it's time to press pause once again and attempt the following question, that is find the distance between the points 5, -3 and 2, 7. Remember, once you're done, make sure you press play and check your answers against mine. Okay, so because we're looking for the distance between these 2 points, there's 5, -3 and 2, 7, I've written out the distance formula that you can see above. I've then gone and written out the 2 points that are written in the question, and I'll label them x1, y1 and x2, y2. Okay, so substituting into the formula now, x2 being 2 minus x1 being 5 squared plus y2 being 7 minus y1 being -3 squared. Now 2 minus 5, just taking the brackets out there, 7 minus -3 becomes a positive, so 7 plus 3. 2 minus 5 is -3, and 7 plus 3 is 10. Squaring the -3 now gets us 9, and squaring the 10 gets us 100, and of course 9 plus 100 is 109. Now it's actually more accurate to keep it as a square root here, so what we're doing is we're just writing the square root of 109, and we're not sure on what the units are, so you just write units. Right, so now it's time to look for the midpoint between 2 points. Now this question says find the midpoint between the points 5, -7 and 4, 3. So because we're looking for the midpoint, we're going to write out the appropriate formula, which you can see that I'm highlighting here now. Right, so let's go through and do that. M is equal to bracket x2 plus x1 over 2, comma, y2 plus y1 over 2. Right, and my 2 points, of course, are 5, -7 and 4, 3. Let's go through and write out what they are. So that's x1, y1, and that's of course x2, y2. Alright, so let's substitute that into the formula now. You've got m is equal to bracket x2 being 4 plus x1 being 5. Of course, remember when I'm substituting in, I make sure I write it in brackets, over 2, comma, and y2 being 3 plus y1 being negative 7 over 2, which of course is equal to 4 plus 5 is 9 over 2, comma, 3 plus negative 7 becomes negative 4 over 2. Now there's no common factors that go into 9 and 2, so we leave that as it is, as a fraction, but we can cancel down negative 4 over 2, that becomes of course negative 2. So therefore the midpoint is at 9 over 2, comma, negative 2. 9 over 2 being my x coordinate and the negative 2 being my y coordinate.
Now, I couldn't rate my buddy Jerry any more highly, but when it comes to meeting up with him, he will never go any more than halfway. And in fact, he'll actually go to all lengths to make sure that this is the case. Hey man, how you going?
Good yourself, Tommy?
Yeah, good thanks.
What's going on?
Not much. Do you want to meet up?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm currently at, wait a second. The point 39. How about yourself?
I'm not sure.
Mate, just have a look up.
I'm at negative 5 and 3.
Cool, negative 5 and 3. How about we meet in the middle?
Sounds good, man.
Alright, let's go.
See if you can run it, girl. Indeed, I can run it. Is your man on the floor? If he ain't, let me know. Let me see if you can run it, girl. Indeed, I can run it. Come here, you see, girl, I can sit you off. Don't believe my age gonna slow us down. I can definitely show you things to have you saying I can't be 16.
It's time to press pause once again and attempt the following questions. Remember, once you've finished, make sure you press play and check them against my solutions. So the question says this: if Tom is standing at the point 3,9 and Jerry is standing at the point negative 5,3, A, find the coordinates of the point that they will need to go to in order to meet up in the middle, and B, prove that this is in fact the midpoint and that they have walked equal distances. Right, essentially what we're doing here is we've got our 2 points, 3,9 and negative 5,3. Right, and I need to find the coordinates of the midpoint, which is basically what it's saying here. So to do that, I've written out the formula for midpoint, and of course I've written out my 2 points that I've been given, this being x1, y1, and this being x2, y2. Substituting in now, so you get x2 being negative 5 plus x1 being 3, over y2 being 3 plus y1 being 9. Negative 5 plus 3 of course is negative 2, and 3 plus 9 is 12. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. Therefore they will meet at the point negative 1, 6. The next question says, prove that this is in fact the midpoint and that they have walked equal distances. What I've done is I've actually plotted these points on a graph. Now you've got the point negative 5, 3, which is where Jerry is, do a little J next to that, and the point 3, 9, which is where in fact I am standing. So do a little T there. Right, we want to prove that this point here is in fact the middle point. Alright, that is that we've walked the same distances. So if I figure out the distance between here and the distance between here, and they're the same, it means that we've walked the same distance. So let's do that first of all. I'll find the distance that Jerry's walked to get into the middle, so that is Jerry's point of negative 5, 3, and the middle point of negative 1, 6. Now of course, negative 5, 3 is x1, y1, and negative 1, 6 is x2, y2. So substituting in now, x2 being negative 1, minus x1 being negative 5, square it, plus y2 being 6, minus y1 being 3. And of course, once again, square it. Negative 1 minus negative 5, well the two negatives here become a positive, so negative 1 plus 5 squared, and then 6 minus 3 just as is. Negative 1 plus 5, of course, is 4, and 6 minus 3 is 3. Now 4 squared is 16, and 3 squared is 9. 16 plus 9 is 25, so therefore the square root of 25 is 5 units exactly. Right, so I know that this here, this distance from Jerry to the midpoint is 5 units. Okay, and so looking for the distance between myself and the midpoint now, let's come down to something that I prepared earlier. So we've got the distance formula. I'll write out my coordinates first of all, 3, 9, and the coordinates of the midpoint, negative 1, 6. Now of course this is x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. Alright, so I've got my formula written out here, substitute in, so x2 being -1 minus x1 being 3, square it, plus y2 being 6, and y1 being 9. Expand the brackets now, so you get -1 minus 3, 6 minus 9. Of course, -1 minus 3 is -4, and 6 minus 9 is -3, so -4 squared becomes 16, -3 squared becomes 9, 16 plus 9 is 25, which is 5 units. Therefore, this distance here is also 5 units. Therefore, because the distance between Tom and the midpoint and Jerry and the midpoint are the same, we can see that the point -1, 6 is in fact the midpoint between -5, 3 and 3, 9. That is, at this point here is the exact midpoint between these 2 points here.
Thank you very much, guys, for tuning into today's lesson, which is all about finding the distance and midpoint between 2 points. Now, hopefully you recognise it's as simple as knowing just a couple of formulas and substituting into these formulas when appropriate. Now, like always, make sure you stay tuned for the very next lesson, because next lesson we're going over linear modelling, which essentially is just recapping on everything that we've learnt this unit and applying it to worded problems. So like always, make sure you say hi to your maths teacher for me. Morsey out.